Welcome back to The Burn. I am Ryan Van Dever, and we are presented to you by Hot Zone Sports, the information that you need to know, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Remember, our show is wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, so if you could rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, first off, congratulations. Secondly, subscribe to the show and then hit that notification button and you'll always know when our content drops. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. What do you got to lose? And wherever you find your social media, we are there. That's right. You can find us on Hot Zone Sports. Just look for the logo. Now, on today's episode, we have a very special guest, and I will let him introduce himself.
What's going on, guys? It's Murdy. I'm one of the hosts of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. We discuss everything college football related. It's strictly related to college football. Man, check out the show on YouTube at the Monty and Murdy CFB Show. You can check us out on any social media platform or wherever you get your podcast. Like I said, give us a shout. I'm really excited. Thanks, Ryan, for having me on, man. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to talk some college football with you, buddy.
Absolutely. And go ahead and subscribe to him if you are on YouTube, because I came across his YouTube channel. And if you want great analytics, great analysis, that is where it is at. Absolutely. So thank you for joining the show. It is our pleasure here at Hot Zone Sports. On this episode on Friday, December 6th, this is a massive college football special. We're going to be jumping into the college football playoff aftermath. And boy, there are a ton of fans not happy with Alabama being in there. And we are also going to go over the 5 most prevalent games in college football championship weekend. And we are going to give you the preview that you need to be able to watch these games this weekend. And we will also be giving our predictions. So, without further ado, let us just jump right into it. All right, so the College Football Playoff Committee released its 5th set of rankings Tuesday, the final indicator before the 12-team playoff field is set on Sunday. And the number 1 seed is no surprise, Oregon Ducks. They've been dominant all season long. Number 2 seed, Texas Longhorns. They've been on a string. Their last loss was at Georgia. Ironically, they play Georgia this weekend. Number 3 seed, SMU. Number 4 seed, Boise State. Number 9, Tennessee. At number 8, Ohio State Buckeyes. They will play the winner of Oregon. Number 12, Arizona State Sun Devils versus the number 5, Penn State Nittany Lions. They will play number 4, Boise State. And number 11, Alabama Crimson Tide at number 6, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Boy, I have some Alabama fans. I just need the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to beat the Crimson Tide one time in my lifetime. But that winner will play SMU. And then number 10, Indiana Hoosiers at the number 7, Georgia Bulldogs. So what surprise did you see from Tuesday's updated college football rankings, if any?
Man, when you look at it, you got to start where the controversy is, right? I mean, no questions on the top 5. Everybody's pretty certain. There's some argument about whether or not Tennessee should be ranked ahead of Ohio State. But whenever you look at it, it's the 11th through the 14th spot. All right, you got Alabama, Miami at 12, Ole Miss at 13, and then you got South Carolina at 14. You have the 3-loss SEC teams mixed in with the 2-loss Miami team that just kind of lost a heartbreaker there. So, yeah, when I look at it, this is an Alabama team that, it's kind of rode the roller coaster this year. You've seen them play really high. If you're talking about like the first half of Georgia versus Georgia, And then you also seen the second half of Georgia where they got the kind of the late save, but Georgia, rallied back all those points. And then they go to Norman and they lose, get beat down by a 6-6 Oklahoma team. And, when you look at it, they're just kind of hit or miss under Kalen DeBoer this first year. But I think, when I'm looking at it, Lane Kiffin, he came out, he had a big post-game press conference, as these coaches have tended to do. These teams that are on that bubble watch, they're always going to go and put their argument on or make their case for their team. But I think Ole Miss's case actually has some validity to it. When you just think about the manner in which they've lost their games, they lost in overtime to LSU at LSU, which we all know, not a really easy place to play there, down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And then they lost a close one to Florida, 17-24, as opposed to, Alabama's 24-3 loss to Oklahoma. And, so whenever you consider that, it's like Ole Miss has tended to show up every week. Now, they haven't won every game, but they've tended to show up every week. And, I think you got to give some validity to that. But I also think they're Alabama, who's Alabama's best win? You tell me that. If you were making an argument for it, who is Alabama's best win?
It's a difficult question because they really haven't played a lot of high profile teams. My biggest thing with Ole Miss is I thought Ole Miss should have been in there over Alabama, but it's that loss to Kentucky that gets me every single time. You cannot, and that's probably what the committee looked at, was the loss to Kentucky, and because Kentucky, that was a good win for them, and you thought they were on the up and up, and then towards the end of the season, you're like, okay, that's a really, really bad loss. And I know in the SEC that they like to say every loss is a good loss, but
not the case.
That's not the case here. But Alabama, I don't know if they have a good win, but Alabama they're a weird team though, because they are so RPO and quarterback heavy that if Jalen Milroe doesn't play good, and my biggest issue with Jalen Milroe is this: when he's out there on the field and he's playing, he predetermines who he's going to throw that ball to before he even snaps the ball. He walks up to the line and he predetermines who he's going to throw it to. He doesn't go through his reads. He doesn't do anything like that. And you can't do that in this modernized football, because these defenses, they scheme for these RPOs, RPIs, quarterback runs, all of it. And that is my biggest thing with them. And I don't know if they end up playing Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is really set up perfectly to stop Jalen Milroe and this offense, because everybody in this country knows that if you stop Jalen Milroe, you stop the entire offensive team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing is it's already been put on tape. Oklahoma did it. They showed you what you need to do, and that's, if you Jalen Milroe, it's like, you said he's pretty much a one read and kind of move. And normally that read in their offense is Ryan Williams, which he has played phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to tell y'all that he's 17 years old. I think everybody is aware that he is 17 years old.
Yeah.
But that's the exact point is, if you take away that read, Jalen Milroe is going to be looking to run. And, if you got good enough linebackers that are athletic enough to be able to track Jalen Milroe as he tries to escape the pocket, and you're able to coach your defensive line to maintain their rush lanes, you can force Alabama to have a pretty rough day offensively. And if you could do that, you got a chance. You're in the driver's seat to win that game.
Yeah. Another thing I would like to address is how these non-conference games are played. And I know this is a bunch of fandom, and I ultimately think that it's going to go this direction. So you can't be playing Mercer. All right, that you got to throw the FCS teams out. You got to stop playing them, because Alabama, when it mattered the most, they needed a good win, and you're going out that week playing Mercer. That's not going to work. So I think, now this is a hypothetical, but I think this is how it's ultimately going to play out. So you're going to have these non-conference games, and it's gonna kind of be like the NFL, where an AFC North will play an AFC East, but in the like the SEC, I think 1 year they'll play the SEC, and maybe the MWC, and the Big 12, they will play the Big 10, and then the AAC or the ACC. What do you think about some kind of format like that? Because basically, when you're in the Big 10, so you got Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana. Those are the most dominant, but not all of them played each other. And so you got the team that they're Penn State played Minnesota. These lower echelon teams. If you mess around with this non-conference schedule, that is going to take all of the questions out of the college football playoff and how it will be determined. Like if you have Alabama in week 13 playing the league leader for the Big 12, Kansas State or BYU, whoever it is, what do you think about something like that?
Well, so, I mean, you got to think that we already kind of do it, in college basketball. They schedule like these little tournaments where hey, it's this league versus this league, and they play it out in their non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see that. I could see that being made, and it would give you a lot more disparity in the leagues. However, I think it's like if you look for the Big Ten example, right? If you look at the top of the Big Ten is, full of a really bunch of good teams. However, the Big Ten drops off in the middle. The middle and bottom of the Big Ten, it just kind of falls off. And that's how you have, you'll have these teams where it's like, well, Penn State, they've played Ohio State. They've beat everybody else, but they lost to Ohio State. The pretty much only comparable team that they played.
Right.
Same thing with Indiana. Oregon, it's like, they played really Ohio State, but they beat them. They also played Boise State and beat them in two very close games. But that's the thing is, like, I think the Big Ten has kind of set themselves up for success as far as, having consistent teams that they're going to be able to put in the playoff because they don't have that meaty conference schedule. And I think your point about getting rid of the FCS teams and then, playing the group of five, incorporating the group of five into your non-conference schedule, it allows for, at least it gives you more of a reference point. You can understand, how these conferences actually stack up to one another a little bit more than what you can right now.
I mean, one last thing to say about that is a lot of these FCS schools, when they do come to play, like Notre Dame, Northern Illinois, when you're coming to play, you're getting, what was it, $2.5–3 million to come play them. And most of the time, you're not going to win. Like Mercer, when UMass played Georgia, teams like that. But that's basically paying your bills in one game when you're not going to be able to achieve that for an entire season if you aren't playing them. So I think that is going to be the pushback that's going to be involved there.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the bigger sport that these schools, they don't have the athletic budget to be able to fund these football teams. So it's like if they don't have these games, they don't get paid to come play these big schools, then they kind of fall flat on their face as far as their athletic budget and their revenue to be able to put a field on the team or a team on the field.
So the big beef with Alabama getting in is with Miami. Imagine that, another ACC team that is not happy. These two teams are not the same. Okay, Miami went 1-2 in their last 3 games by an average of 4.5 points to a ranked Syracuse and Georgia Tech team that just took Georgia to 8 overtimes. Alabama went 2-1 to 5-7 Auburn, destroyed by OU, and beat FCS Mercer. This is the argument that Miami fans and Miami boosters are coming out with. let me just tell you this. Miami, all you had to do was win. You didn't, because your defense is one of the worst defenses in all of America. You have a great offense, but that defense couldn't save you at all. You couldn't stop Syracuse at all. Syracuse, okay? So what do you have about this big blow up on Twitter? All the social media have been buzzing about it.
Well, I mean, the thing is that Miami's been playing with fire all year. You know, they were this close. I mean, that dude's. I'm talking about that dude's elbow from the freaking losing the Virginia Tech game, right? And even the call. There's a lot of controversy surrounding it, and
Yep.
I think what the committee really boiled down to is they looked at these two teams, and they looked at Alabama and they looked at Miami, and they said, well, if we were picking a game right now, who would we pick? And they said, Alabama, with depending on which version you're going to get, but they've shown you to be at least a more complete team, as opposed to Miami has been like, well, we know they can score points, but we also know that they're going to give up a lot of points.
Yeah.
And it's like whenever you compare that in a matchup to Alabama, it's like, well, that matchup tends to favor Alabama because Miami or Alabama's defense is going to be able to limit Miami's scoring opportunities, and if Miami can't stop them, then good luck.
Yeah, I just think that it boils down to the competition level in the SEC. I mean, you got the ACC. What you got? SMU. I mean, Florida State was hot garbage all year. I mean, there's not a lot of competition, not like the SEC when you're going up against, number 19 Missouri, number 7 Tennessee. I mean, LSU when they were actually a team. I mean, but their losses were bad though. They lost to Vanderbilt, who were kind of they're not the same Vanderbilt team they were, but they're not the greatest. So it's not a great loss. You get taken to the woodshed by Oklahoma, and I mean you beat Auburn by 14. So I mean it's just these teams are not the same.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to, I don't think we can really talk about what happened last week without bringing it up or at least mentioning it. So what was your opinion on all the flag planting, phenomenon that kind of took over the country after, Big Noon Kickoff, which I got some beef with Big Noon Kickoff. I hate it. Because they always schedule the biggest, they do the Big Ten wrong. That Ohio State Penn State game was at noon in Happy Valley. You're like, come on, the one game that should be a night game. But either way, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But the flag planting that kind of took over the country because all those other teams got to watch Ohio State and Michigan do it. So what is your take on that?
My take is, and it was a lot of people's takes over the weekend. I mean, there's two sides to this coin for me. You got Steve Sarkisian in Texas, who have a big win over a team that they haven't played in 13 years. And so, all of their players wanted to go do the flag planting, and they were about to. And Steve Sarkisian said, no. I thought that was a classy move. But I do understand that when you're North Carolina and you're playing North Carolina State and you're either born into North Carolina or you're born into North Carolina State, and the same thing with Ohio State and Michigan. You will not meet an Ohio State fan that is friendly with a Michigan fan. It's just not going to happen. So my big thing was, you got to keep it classy. Ohio State and Michigan got really out of control. I mean, you got police officers on the field macing people. It was just out of control. But I will turn it back to you. Okay, so wild thought here, guys. If I give you a flag on a turf field, how are you going to plant that? How's that going to work out for you?
Yep. Probably not well. It has not worked. On in case anybody was wondering, everybody who's tried it, they have not been able to get it to stick. But yeah, that's kind of what it boils down to. It's a whole it's like a whole metaphorical thing. It's the see me. So just a little bit about me. So grew up an Oklahoma fan. OU pretty much since I was a kid, right? Um, with that, Oklahoma, Texas, they do it every year. But it has something to do with, so it's nothing unfamiliar to Texas fans or OU fans, but it has something familiar with that game, because it's a neutral site game. It's not on anybody's home stadium, and the person who wins the game gets to claim, they own, the Red River or whatever the case. That's kind of the whole symbolism behind it. So it's nothing unfamiliar to me, or especially, Baker Mayfield when he planted the flag back in 2017 at the shoe, right? Or hang on, planted the flag, right? But yeah, it's a whole metaphorical thing, and it's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I like the passion. I love the rivalry. That's why people are sitting here watching this show. They love college football and they love the passion that backs it and behind it. But I agree. I mean, you can't let it be getting out of control where we're out here freaking, having a street fight in the middle of the 50-yard line is just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually surprised that Fox didn't go back to the studios but they just kept on going with it. But I do blame Baker Mayfield for all of this. Because if it wasn't for Baker Mayfield, we wouldn't be having any of this going on right
now. Yeah, that's true. And I think he'll probably rightfully own that one. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and move on to the first game of the weekend.
Let's do it.
Number 20, UNLV. They just came out of the graveyard. They are 10-2 going up against Boise State, 11-1. Boise State is a 4-point favorite as of today. And they are going to be fighting for the MWC title. Number 10, Boise State Broncos. And there's only one thing you can say about them. Ashton, Jeanty, right? But the Broncos are coming into this game absolutely red hot. They're on a current 9-game winning streak. Last week, they blew out Oregon State 34-18. Granted, Boise State isn't exactly Alabama for any means, but this is a rematch of last year's Mountain West Championship, a game in which the Broncos won 44-20. The Broncos have one of the best offenses in the conference. They are second in Mountain West in total offense with 478. Sixth in passing offense was 224.8, and third in rushing offense with 253.5. In addition, Boise State is first in the conference in points per game. Maybe you've heard of Ashton Jeanty. I don't know. He's an absolute menace in the backfield. He is a home run threat anytime he touches the ball. What would you like to add that I haven't added about Boise State? Because this is going to be a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, and something I don't think should be, missed about this game. This is a home game for Boise State. This is played in Boise, Idaho. And that's something kind of unique to the Mountain West Conference. But yeah, and I think a missed part of Boise State, obviously, Jeanty is, he's probably the best player in the country. He put up freaking phenomenal, just unworldly stats this season. But the part of it that's kind of missed is, the type of season that Madsen is having as Boise State's quarterback. He's not, he basically understands. He's like, look, I got the freaking best guy in the country lining up behind me. He's like, I don't have to put the ball in harm's way. He's 21 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's completing 61% of his passes. He's just efficient with the football, and he's able to give Boise State that extra, kind of dimension or dynamic to them where, they're not just a one-threat team. You still have to respect that they may be able to throw the football on you. So you can't, that's why you're not seeing loaded boxes. Everybody's like, we just got to load up and stop Jeanty because he can beat you. And he's not going to put the balls in harm's way. He's not going to, give you easy turnovers. And, that gets you to play winning football, which Boise State has done all this year. And they took the number 1 team in the country, gave them everything that they wanted this year.
Yeah, one thing I will mention is senior wide receiver Ricky White III. He is the main weapon in the passing attack. He can win on all three levels on the field with his secure hands. Like, I have not seen him drop too many passes this year, but he ranks second in the conference in both receiving yards with 1,020 and touchdowns with 11. And he can do it on all levels. Like I just said, he's gone over 100 yards 5 times this season. And on November 9th against Hawaii, White had 7 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown. But if there's one thing that I do know about this UNLV team is this is probably going to be the best secondary that Boise State is going to go up against. So obviously they're going to they're going to stack that box against Ashton Jeanty, and they're going to make Boise State pass it. And that is when Ricky White is going to come into play. I do not think that they're going to be able to stop Jeanty and stop White at the same time. There are going to be some big over-the-top plays.
Yeah, and I mean, so we also got to mention. I mean, these teams have played this year already. Boise State beat them 29-24. That game was played in Las Vegas, so a home game for UNLV.
Right.
And man, granted, UNLV. This is a playoff. This is a playoff game. Winner gets in. And man, you just gotta give hats off to UNLV, how they've rebounded. I mean, they had the hot start to the season. They pushed themselves early into the playoff rankings, and then their quarterback transfers after like three weeks, and it's like, everybody's like, kind of, oh well, they were such a great story, but now they're going to fall off. But hats off to this team for keeping their head down, still grinding. Malik Williams, he's took over. He's played great football for him, even though his numbers aren't as prolific as everybody. But it's like you also got to think he missed the first 3 games of the season because they had a different starting quarterback.
Right. I mean, it's going to be an interesting game. But let's go ahead and go with our predictions for this game. I have this game predicted going 28-24, and it's going to hold straight on that line. So, bettors, I just don't think they can stop Jeanty and this offense. I just don't see it. He's been consistently great all season long. I mean, just go look at the Oregon game, and UNLV is no Oregon defense.
Yeah, and I'm gonna join you on that. Boise State's gonna win this game, but I think they're gonna win it probably a little. I think it's gonna be even a little bit bigger spread. I'm thinking more like a 31-21 or maybe a 31-24. I think they're gonna be able to put up a pretty good amount of points on this UNLV team, especially with that home field advantage and their defense helping them out. And the crowd, obviously, is gonna be crazy for this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the Big 12 title game. Iowa State versus Arizona State. This was supposed to be Utah or Arizona or Oklahoma State or Kansas State or even Colorado. But nope. There's a different former Pac-12 team in the mix, along with a program that is long overdue for something special. Iowa State is still basking in the glow of back-to-back conference championships in 1911 and 1912. No, that is not military time. Those are year dates. It was a rocky for a few weeks with back-to-back losses to Texas Tech and Kansas, but 3 straight wins included a home victory over Kansas State last week, and that got them here for the second shot at a Big 12 title. It lost to Oklahoma in 2020. But Cam Scatabo,
that's where you got to start.
I just want to touch on this because in the social media sphere, Cam Scatabo is considered better than Ashton Jeanty. And I get it. He's a downhill runner. He's a bruiser. But he is the one that sets this Arizona State offense apart. I just don't know how he's not going to set the tone for this game. The Sun Devils own the clock. They don't turn the ball over, and they don't take a ton of chances, which leads me to my point. Don't you think it's about time Arizona State opens up the playbook just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a good question to raise, and I think Kansas State I think showed you some possibilities to be able to do that last week against Iowa State. Kansas State was able to connect on a couple of big shots. Granted, Sam Levitt hasn't really done it this year, but kind of similar to UNLV's quarterback. He hasn't put the ball in jeopardy too much. He's 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and overall, I don't know if they're gonna need to, but I think they have the possibility should the need arise, if that makes sense. I think Scadaboo, they can rely on him and they can play efficient game. This Kenny Dillingham coach team, they have not really beat themselves this year. And actually one of the better defenses that's kind of come through, and they've really started playing good as of late, and they've played pretty good pretty much all season. At least keeping them in football games. So I don't want to think that part of it's missed. And then you also have the counter side of it. They got the famous Jim Knowles, Iowa State 3-3-5. The innovative defense that's meant to prevent the deep pass. But as we saw against Kansas State, it's there. And I think with Scadaboo's threat, kind of similar to Jeanty's, you have that threat of him in the backfield that allow teams are going to, focus in on that. And that's going to allow those deep shot opportunities to be there should you choose to take them.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest thing about Iowa State is, they recently played Kansas State, obviously had to win that game. But if there's one weakness that they have, and it obviously didn't show, it didn't rear its head exactly that much against Kansas State, just because Kansas State couldn't get it out of their own way when it came to their miscues and their turnovers. But Iowa State, they are not a ground and pound team, but it has its style on offense that keeps most games from getting into shootouts. And the defense is great at taking the ball away. Something is going to have to give here. There might be a ton of tackles for loss, and the pass rush isn't anything great for Iowa State, but Arizona State has the worst pass rush in the Big 12. That should matter in the late part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not they can put pressure on Rocco Beck, he's been inconsistent for Iowa State this year. Played a really good game against Kansas State, but he is kind of similar to Kansas State's quarterback. I've been saying it all year. They kind of ride the wave. Their first year starters. I think Rocco Beck, he probably started last season, so he'd be a second year guy. But they've kind of been all year. It's like their highs. You're like, yeah, I see why they picked him, right? Then their lows, you're like, okay, what are we doing, guy? And it's like the fans would just like to find some consistency, try to get know what to expect out of them. But like I said, he's been kind of hit or miss all year. He hit last game. Does that mean he's due for a miss? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I got to go with Arizona State in this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But the line is just, man, it is really low. It's like you're sitting at -2.5 for Arizona State. That tells me one thing. Vegas doesn't even know who's going to win this game when you get a line like this. But I'm going to go with Arizona State because all season long, they have been able to control the clock with ease. And with Cam Scadaboo, and I just don't know how you're going to stop the most consistent running back production-wise in the Big 12 all season long. I don't know how you're going to stop this. So I have the Sun Devils winning this game 31-21.
31-21. So I'm gonna go the opposite. Last time I said a bigger spread, I'm gonna go closer. I think we're more like a 27-24 here. But yeah, Arizona State still winning this one. So we've kind of been the same on at least our first two predictions there.
Let's go on to the Atlantic Coast Conference. This was supposed to be Miami and SMU, everybody. But now we have Clemson and SMU. You want to know the line in this one? Hey, it's another -2.5 SMU's favor. No surprise there. But this game on Saturday is going to be number 8 SMU and number 17 Clemson for an automatic bid. The SMU Mustangs are 11-1 this season and are a perfect 8-0 in their first season in the ACC. No, I'm not trying to jinx you. Despite being in the same conference, these teams didn't face off yet. They didn't face off this season, but they did have a common opponent in the Louisville Cardinals that the Mustangs beat, and Clemson lost to. With 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country leading the way, the offense will likely dictate who wins this game. However, with some impact players on the defensive side of the ball, getting a big stop or turnover is going to wind up being the difference in this game. I know it's cliche, but these are the facts, guys. You expect Clemson to be defensively superior to most teams they face, and in 2024, they've allowed less than 21 points in 7 of their 12 games. And linebacker Barrett Carter has been their defensive leader. But Sammy Brown and TJ Parker have weighed in with double-digit tackles for loss. Second-year standout Parker has been a dynamic pass rusher with 10 sacks. So, saying all of that, one of my biggest takeaways is this game is going to strictly come down to who is going to get that last stop. SMU, they have been on fire all season long when it comes to their running back, when it comes to their quarterback, their entire offense, and they are very electric. They get explosive plays throughout the game. Now, Clemson, on the other hand, sometimes Clemson from last season shows up and rears its ugly head, and then sometimes Cade Klubnik actually looks like a viable quarterback. What do you have to say, Murdy?
Well, man, yeah, Clemson. So you mentioned Cade Klubnik, how he's, sometimes he looks great, sometimes he doesn't look good at all.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a coincidence that the teams that are, reputable or ranked teams, Louisville was spent most of the season ranked this year. Georgia obviously spent all the year ranked. Even against Pitt, who spent a little bit of time ranked. Those are the teams that Cade Klubnik has, not played his best in, not played well against. It's the better teams that Clemson is having to face. But now, granted, whenever they go and play Stanford, yeah, he looks freaking great. When they play Virginia, yeah, he looks great. But this SMU team, they've played everybody close. They had one, 3-point loss to BYU in Provo, freaking all the way out in Utah from Dallas, Texas. So, I don't think you can hold that one against them too much. I mean, especially BYU. I mean, that's the 18th ranked team in the country right now. And to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you why this line is as close as it is, unless there's just some, SMU probably still has some doubters. And that's what it boils down to. But the game's played in Charlotte. Is it crazy to think that SMU is going to win a conference in their first year when the conference isn't even giving them money?
It is pretty crazy, but Here's the thing. The Tigers we cannot forget about this, okay? The Tigers were decimated by South Carolina quarterback Lenore Sellers in their last game, okay? They gave up 166 yards and 2 touchdowns while making the Gamecocks standout look like Lamar Jackson, okay? SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings isn't Lamar Jackson, but he still has the same caliber of athlete. And I just don't know how you're going to be able to go from 1 week just getting absolutely decimated by Lenore Sellers and making him look like an all-pro quarterback at this rate, and just completely stop SMU, who boasts one of the most underrated running backs in the country, and Brashard Smith, the 4th-year running back. He's averaging 6 yards per carry with 1,157 yards and 14 touchdowns. And he's practically been unstoppable. Expect Smith to lead the way as the Mustangs are going to trample the Tigers.
Yep. I mean, this is just a bad matchup for Clemson. I mean, they have the 73rd rushing defense in the country. SMU has the 5th scoring offense in the country, while also kind of under the radar here. Not something I even expect until I started researching this game a little bit. SMU has the 4th rushing defense in the country. So what does that tell you? Cade Klubnik's going to have to beat them. And do I believe he's going to be able to make as much plays as what Rhett Lashley, who is probably one of the best play callers in the country, is going to be able to scheme up, and Kevin Jennings is going to be able to make plays with his legs, and I just don't think Clemson's going to be able to match him here. Now, granted, I could come out looking stupid. It's happened before, but with this one, man, I got to go SMU probably pretty big here. I'm going to say probably more like a 31-17 here for SMU. Pull away late in the 4th quarter there. I think Clemson will keep it close for the first half.
Yeah, I'm going to give Clemson a little bit more credit because I am expecting Cade Klubnik to actually come to play in this game. Now, I've had mud on my face before in these predictions, but it's not going to happen this time, guys. I got SMU 34-24.
Pretty fair.
It's going to be an ugly game in the second half because SMU is just going to shove that rock down the Tigers' throats, and they won't be able to do anything about it because what happens in the second half? Defensive players get tired, especially in that 4th quarter, and Clemson does not have the depth to be able to stop SMU for 4 quarters.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to just, the mindset of this team, everybody's talked about it. They're like, oh, well, this is a must-win for Clemson. It's like, well, technically for Clemson, they went into last week with the understanding that last week was a must-win, and they fell short to South Carolina. So how do they, how do you remotivate yourself? You're like, you get everybody's hands in. We're all in for this one. And it's like, you end up losing. You're like, well, Miami lost, so now we're all in for this one. It's like, how do you get that double buy-in on, hey, this is it? So we'll see. But yeah, I think SMU is going to win this one probably pretty handily, and the SMU Downers got to be really putting up the middle finger to the ACC there.
Yeah, all the money they're bringing in, and they're not getting anything in return. That is the biggest pile of dump they're taking in Dallas. Like,
yeah,
God, I don't know how they could do them like that. But let's move up to probably the biggest mashup of the weekend, and that is going to be Texas against Georgia. I'm sure the entire world's eyes are going to be peeled and focused in on this game. Can Texas come out on top against Georgia in their rematch? These teams have a possibility of playing each other for a 3rd time this season, which we all knew was a possibility with the expanded 12-team playoff. But when you watch this Texas team, you don't really see a lot of explosiveness. Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, they're no longer on this team. You don't see a team that can just light up the scoreboard and throw up ungodly offensive numbers, even with all the 5-star blue chipper additions that they have added to this offense. Texas's defense is where the strength lies. Texas has the number 2 defense in the nation, giving up 11.7 points per game, 103 yards per game, with a 3.0 clip, and 147 passing yards per game. It's not that their offense is bad, but this is where their money is made. Defense. It is one of the things that sets them apart. That's a reason why they're 11-1. They had just one slip up versus, ironically enough, Georgia. Turnovers, field position. Georgia scored 30 points on 258 yards. But week 8 is different than week 15 in college football. Ain't that right, Murdy?
It is, man. It is. And I think Vegas is telling you that it's different, with Texas being favored in this game to a team that they lost to at home, which is kind of one of the most surprising things whenever you start to break down this game. And I think it really has to come with, Georgia, a lot like we talked about earlier in the show with Alabama. They've been kind of hit or miss this year. You never know. It's like, yeah, they almost got beat by Kentucky. They got handled pretty well handled against Ole Miss. And they lost to Alabama. which, that was like the tale of two halves. That game was just insane.
Yeah.
Sorry we didn't get to break down that one, but yeah, because that was just an insane game. Uh, but yeah, like you mentioned, the Texas defense is the strength of this team. They're not as explosive on offense, but I think there are some big points that are question marks in this game. Kelvin Banks' health. They're starting left tackle. Future first rounder probably at the end of this year. But he got banged up in that Texas A&M game. We'll see how he performs against a Georgia defense and a Georgia defensive line specifically that this Texas offensive line struggled against the last time they played. And that was the tale of the first game, was that Georgia just dominated the trenches. Their offensive line blew Texas's defensive line off the ball, and their defensive line controlled the Texas offensive line. Now, granted, I think Texas has gotten better on defense since that game. I think Anthony Hill has come into kind of a world of his own. He's playing, he's playing phenomenal right now. The fact that he didn't make a Butkus finalist is, kind of surprising. Granted, this is coming from an Oklahoma fan, right? And I'm still giving them their props because I think that defense is, I thought they were going to take a step back, especially after losing T'Vondre Sweat, and the other defensive lineman, Byron Murphy. No, that's not it. Mm-hmm. Is that it? Yeah, it's Byron Murphy.
Yeah.
Losing them to the NFL draft last year, I thought they would take a step back, but these guys have been, consistently good on basically every game except the Georgia game. So
I want to talk about Georgia and how they are a second half team. It has to be noted that they are a second half team, because last week when they played Georgia Tech, they were down 17-0. Yeah, they ultimately ended up winning 44-42, but they probably shouldn't have won that game. And it happened again against Florida, going down 13-6 at the half, and they ended up winning 34-20. Florida, the team that has struggled for most of the season, except for the latter half of the season. It's happened too often to ignore. Carson Beck is a very hot, cold quarterback. Some argue he's even regressed from his 2023 version. He had 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That doesn't sound too bad this season, unless you've actually watched the games, which I have. Last season, he had 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in total. Now, this is a two-part question here. Do you think I have a valid argument here? And two, what do you think is going on with Carson Beck?
Man, if I could figure out what exactly is going on with Carson Beck, I'd probably be making a lot more money doing this than what, because that's the question that everybody has, right? This is the guy who came into the season as the presumably number one overall pick. They're like, Caleb Williams last year. They're like, hey, Carson Beck this year. It's a, shut and close case. You don't even have to play the games. Well, guess what? We played the games, and his struggles have mainly come in SEC play. And I don't think that's something that can be ignored. I think there are games where he just makes bad reads, or he's late on balls. He misses over the middle. But the biggest thing, what it boils down to, is whenever Carson Beck does play good and he is throwing receivers open, he shows you that ability that he has. I mean, you saw it in the Tennessee game where he's throwing receivers open before they even come out of their breaks, and he's putting the ball out there. They're, making plays. The Georgia offense is moving, but I think that's with that is what one of the questions that comes with this game is, what version of Carson Beck are we going to see here? I mean, there are some theories out there. It could be that he's dating one of the Cavender twins. That hey, I didn't say it, but it got floated out there.
I said it on my podcast actually. The way I see Carson Beck is, I see he has some Brett Favre in him. And he's a lot like Nussmeier in this way, where he is a gunslinger. But the new defense in college football is a lot of disguise zone coverage. And they do some things where they take that away. The RPO, they take defensive ends and they sink them into coverage. This is something that teams have completely bitched about. Now, you can no longer predetermine, like I talked earlier, about who you're going to pass the ball to. Now you have to go up to the scrimmage, snap the ball, wait 2 to 2.5 seconds to determine where your drops are going to be at. And if you predetermine your pass at the line, you're going to throw a pick. And that is what happened when these two teams matched up in their last game. Carson Beck is going to have to take his checkdowns in this game. That is ultimately how they won the Georgia Tech game. But even when both the offenses and defenses get tired, it doesn't affect the offense as much as it affects the defense. The windows open wider, and it allows the offense to allows them to operate more freely. I expect coaches Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian to have a new approach to protecting Ewers, because with that injury he has, we don't know if it's actually getting better with him playing last week, but there's going to have to, in this game, whether it's a way to be able to find a last-second front changes or keep an extra back or tight end into protection, it's going to have to be figured out.
Give me one prediction on this before you predict the actual game. Okay. How much Arch Manning do you think we see this week?
Man, I've been clamoring for Arch Manning, but it is ultimately going to come down to how mobile Ewers can be in this game, because in the last game they played, they obviously pulled him, and Arch Manning, he went 3 for 6 in a few series. Well, I just have a feeling that Steve Sarkisian is going to go with Ewers until the wheels on that wagon fall off. And if he really struggles in this game, like say he struggles in the first half, well, you're gonna have to put Arch Manning into that second half. But they also realize that even if they lose this game, they're going to be in the college football playoff anyway. I mean, this game is played in Georgia, so this is basically going to end up being a home game for the Georgia Bulldogs, because not a lot of Texas fans are going to want to travel to Atlanta and then go back home and then take a week off and then travel wherever they're going to have to play at, whether or not they win this game. But I think that could have a big determining factor on the outcome of this game, because Georgia travels well.
So let's get your prediction. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's still going to be a somewhat low scoring game. It's not going to be in the teens. It's going to be in the low 20s. I got Texas taking this 24-21. I just think that they're going to have Texas is going to reduce their turnovers and enhance their offensive play to compete with Georgia's aggressive defense. But this game is so level set on chalk that it's going to have to come down to the turnover battle. And I think in the end, Texas and Steve Sarkisian is going to learn from their mistakes in the last game.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree here. I'm going similar score, right? But I'm going Georgia. Give me the dogs here, 24-20. I think Texas takes the lead into halftime. All right, I'm thinking it'll look around like a 14-10 game. And I think Georgia's going to end up scoring those 2 touchdowns, hold Texas to one touchdown or maybe 2 field goals. As you said, Georgia is a second half team. I think they're going to be able to take that step, maybe score a late fourth quarter touchdown, go up 24-20. That's how I see this one playing out.
Well, mention it all in this pick. He is an Oklahoma fan, guys. Let me say.
Hey, no disrespect, Texas, but I think Georgia's got a little more to play for in this one.
They do, but I don't know if it was.
Oh, it's tough. I've debated it all week.
Yeah, if you can only have 1 3-loss team in the college football playoff, you're gonna pick Georgia, because every single one of their losses were against teams that were top 10 in the college football playoff rankings. Like they had one of the toughest schedules in all of the nation, and there's no even arguing that. But let's go ahead and move on to another ridiculous matchup: Penn State and Oregon. Oregon is favored by 3.5 in the Big Ten title game. We didn't have the best teams playing each other in the Big Ten championship. We don't. Sorry, guys. Chalk did not hold when it came to Ohio State. like nobody thought that Penn State was going to be in this position. After the OSU lost, they were expected to just hang back while Oregon and OSU handled things, but now Penn State is in their spot, and I think they have a different type of challenge Oregon does. Oregon is disruptive in their fronts, but not overly big when it comes to size. But when you take a closer look at the Ducks defense, looking at Boise State game where Jeanty had success running the football, but this seemed to be an occurrence with other teams that played them too. Penn State has a two-headed tandem at the running back position and can come at you hard when they've been successful in almost every single game this season. Oregon's defense, as good as they are, have given up 4 yards per carry versus Illinois, 5 yards per carry versus Purdue, 4.3 yards per carry, and 141 rushing yards to Ohio State. Jeanty had 6.7 yards per carry and 200 rushing yards. They also gave up over 100 yards to Wisconsin. You can run on Oregon. It is there if you have the ability.
So, yeah, this one, man. Whenever I look at this one, and it's kind of been my theory on Penn State ever since. I mean, at least for the most recent period of time. First thing you need to look at when you're looking at a Penn State game is what's the spread. All right, who's favored to win it? Because if Penn State's not favored to win it, they're probably not going to win it. And that's kind of been a consistent deal. But if they're favored to win, hey, guess what? They're going to win it. And they're probably going to win it by, whatever month they're supposed to. I haven't been, I wasn't too impressed with Penn State, especially in their game against Ohio State, right? You can look at when they played a quality opponent of Oregon's level, right? They got out to a quick 10-0 jump. Thanks to, they have some great edge rushers. Abdul Carter's probably going to be a first-round pick, coming off the edge for them. And they always have a pretty good D-line. Their D-line coach does a good job of putting the guys in the league. But they got out to an early jump on Ohio State. But ever since that point, nothing. And they weren't able to move the ball on them offensively. And Drew Aller, he's not been very dynamic. I think Dylan Gabriel playing his fifth or sixth year of college football. At this point, it gets hard to keep up whenever I start losing it on if I can count it on one hand or not. So yeah, Dylan Gabriel, I think what you're going to get from him. He's kind of one of those guys. He plays a pretty consistent level. I think there are some opportunities there. I think Jordan James, with the Oregon rushing attack, I think they have some opportunities to be able to move the ball. And I just think Oregon is a more complete team here than Penn State. But like I said, that doesn't mean that the avenue there is not for, the avenue's not there for Penn State to win this game. It's just, there is a lot, but Oregon's also playing on an undefeated season. And it's, once those undefeated season starts getting closer to the end, you're like, it's almost like the apprehension builds and, it's like, that's kind of what I feel like you saw Oregon play Wisconsin. It's like, you saw that kind of apprehension in them. They're, all you want to do is not be able to, they're favored by 13.5 in that game and they end up winning by 3, 16-13. And like I said, I just also don't believe that Penn State's going to be able to make the plays on offense with Drew Aller to be able to match this Oregon State offense. And I think Dan Lanning's going to be able to scheme up some good stuff on defensive side of the ball for Oregon there.
I think this game is suggesting that it's going to be a low-scoring game. Penn State is second in tackles for loss in the conference. Oregon is third in the conference. Sacks, Oregon is first in the conference. Penn State is fourth. Run defense is where is going to get weird with Penn State at fifth, Oregon at seventh, which goes off of what I said. Oregon is a very spread-happy type of offense with Gabriel. They're going to attack the field laterally and move that ball that way. Now, don't get offended by this, but they haven't been very explosive down the field over the past couple seasons. But this is how the offense is intended to attack with the spread offense. Penn State is built to defend this attack very well. You have to be quick on the back end, disciplined, and they have the players to be able to do that. I don't think that Oregon is going to be able to exploit this Penn State defense the way they did the OSU defense earlier in the season when they passed on 10 yards per attempt. Penn State is going to present a different type of challenge. These teams are so evenly matched when it comes to these three phases, so it's going to be a very intriguing as to see how this is going to play out. But the last thing I'm going to say is it might just come down to quarterback play. Which offense is going to be more explosive? And I have worried about Drew Aller since last season. He is one of the more inconsistent quarterbacks of any of the teams in the college football playoff that actually plays well. He does not do things very well when he is lined up against the opposition that is equally, if not better. And in those games, he disappears into the limelight.
So let me ask you a question. If you were looking at the playoff teams right now as they are, which teams quarterbacks, would you take Drew Aller over? Right? So who would you say, like, I'd take Drew Aller over this guy?
Maybe Arizona State. Maybe. Because Arizona State's quarterback is just as inconsistent as Drew Aller. It's just wild. You get these kids that come out of high school being 4-star, 5-star quarterbacks, and Drew Aller is developing so slowly. But playing off of what you said earlier, when they are going up against these teams where they are favored, he looks like he's out of this world. But when he goes up against Ohio State, like,
that's about it.
He can't do anything at all. And it's just, I know they got a new offensive coordinator, Penn State did, but I don't know. I've never been a fan of Franklin. Like, I just never been a fan of him when he has to play a big game. He's like that Homer Simpson meme where he hides away in the bushes, So,
it just disappears in. Yeah. Well, the thing is, he'll disappear in, and then he'll come out and immediately complain about something in the post-game press conference, whether it's some call or some way something was officiated or the way, something was handled. He's going to have something to put the blame on. It's like, well, we lost this game because, freaking Oregon paid the refs or, whatever he's going to come up with.
Yeah, either that or he'll find a fan in the stands and start talking junk to them. So there's that.
Oh, God.
So let's go ahead and move on to our predictions. I have this game in the low teens. I have Oregon winning this game 24-21. What about you, Murdy?
I got Penn State scoring a little bit less. I think they're going to be more around the 13 point. So I think they'll score 13. I don't think Dylan Gabriel, he's going to give them the opportunities that Will Howard did to put up points on them early. And I think Penn State's offense is going to struggle a little bit, not put up as many points as they would like to. I got to get 13. I'm going to have to go with Oregon scoring right around 24. So 24-13 for this one for me. Because I think Penn State's going to be able to play. Their defense is going to be able to limit Oregon to more than what they've been all year, or at least restrict them. But I think Oregon, they do play a little bit good when they spread the field laterally to be able to kind of not completely eliminate, but kind of negate that aggressive Penn State pass rush. They can get some stuff to the quick outs and, have those edge defenders at least give them something to think about out there on the side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can see how it's going to work like that. It's just it's hard to ignore Oregon's defense when it comes to stopping the run. It's true. It's just the yards per carry that they have been giving up all season is just really in your face there.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go ahead and move on to my most exciting topic in this episode, the Heisman Frontrunner guys, because we all know it's going to come down to two guys, Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. And Murdy, I'm going to let you take the lead on this.
Well, obviously Travis Hunter is probably the favorite, right? That's the one that the media is pushing for because he's playing, it's a generational thing that he's doing, playing the quarterback position at a high level, playing the receiver position at a high level. One thing that I just want to talk about whenever we, discuss that is, everybody's like, well, we've never seen this done before. And it's like, yeah, because there's a reason you've never seen this done before. People don't want to put that wear on their bodies, right? They want to train to a specific position. College football is supposed to be preparing you for the NFL. This isn't an evolution of high school football. It's, hey, we're getting you ready to try to get you drafted. Now, Travis Hunter's already said he's going to play both ways in the NFL. Wait till you see some of the guys in the NFL. It's not the same people that are playing in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And with that, it's like, I get it. It's great. And, it is impressive how many snaps he plays. And, he's still got the juice kind of at the end of the games. His stamina's kind of amazing. But he's not a big guy. This isn't some 300-pounder running around. He's about 190, 6'1", 190. And, he's just got the stamina to go all day. And, you could take some reps off at receiver. I promise you when there's a run play, there's probably some reps being taken off at receiver there. But what Jeanty's doing, man, it's like, granted, he's probably not going to reach Barry Sanders' level, right? He's not going to match the record.
Yeah.
But when you look at everybody else who's put up those stats, the list is few and far between anybody that's done what Jeanty's doing at this level.
I don't think Jeanty was going to win the Heisman to begin with. I wrote an article before the season even began because not a lot of people realized who Jeanty was. So I wrote a little bio on him. But unless he broke Barry Sanders' records, and he did it against a tougher schedule, he wasn't going to even win this Heisman. I believe that he should win the Heisman because we have not seen this type of production out of a running back in one season in over a decade. And it's going to come down to Jeanty and Hunter ultimately because Cam Ward, I love the guy, very talented, but this is a popularity award, and if your team is not doing well, you're not going to stand any chance. But what are the voters going to value more? A two-way player or one of the best running backs we've seen by the numbers in quite some time? Jeanty deserves the Heisman, but it is a popularity contest. The award, to me, has lost its legitimacy when Melvin Gordon lost, when he rushed for 2,587 yards in 2014. He didn't win the Heisman. Travis Hunter is going to win the Heisman because the award is a popularity contest. And I understand that might ruffle some feathers, but really, Ashton Jeanty's season has been nothing short of spectacular. The Boise State running back has rushed for 2,288 yards, and it's going to be more this Saturday. He has 29 total touchdowns and an impressive 7.3 yards per carry. Like, you do not see that in the college football game. But he showcased his ability to dominate against elite defenses. Jeanty has rushed for over 100 yards 12 times and crossed over 200 yards 5 times this season. And as a result, to me, he has put himself above Travis Hunter. But if you really want to go by the schedules, if you really want to come out and say, oh, well, he played weak teams, you do realize Colorado and Boise State have pretty much the same strength of record. Like, they're right there. So if that's your excuse, I'm sorry. The Big 12 isn't the SEC. And everybody needs to stop acting like it is. Okay? You got Arizona. You got BYU. Hey, they were great all season long. But actually, there was a blueprint on how to beat them. But Travis Hunter, I get it. He is a great two-way player. But you're not doing that in the NFL. Deion Sanders, he was a two-way player. don't forget, punt returner. When I was on the Dallas Cowboys, he was wide receiver sometimes. But when it comes to the NFL, wear and tear is going to be important. And if you get drafted by the Titans or whatever projection you want to go by, that team is not going to let him do two-way. You're either going to be a wide receiver or you're going to be a DB. And there's going to be no questions about it, because when a team drafts a player, they don't want him to get injured. And the more snaps that he plays, the more it decreases his viability as a superstar player, because it's going to decrease his years in the league.
Yeah. And, it depends on how long you can hold on to him. One thing I wanted to ask you in regards to Jeanty, right, is his receiving, his use in the passing game has taken a step back this season from last season. I wanted to see, do you think that would play, say he was a bigger role in the passing game for Boise State this year? Because, he only has 18 receptions, 102 yards on the season. If he was a bigger role like he was last year with 43 receptions, 569 yards, 5 touchdowns, as a receiving back, do you think that would obviously, I'm not saying, of course it would help his chances, if you have that much more stats or that much more weight, but do you think that might be something that's playing kind of into this, why you're not seeing Jeanty kind of, be the clear favorite for this award?
Maybe a little bit. I don't think it holds very much discrepancy when it comes to this argument, because it's just like last season, okay? And, leading off this conversation, here's my waiver I'm going to throw off to you. I'm not a Colorado Buffaloes hater. I actually like Deion Sanders. And to me, he's one of the best college coaches in all the land because of what kind of turnaround he did with the Buffaloes. Like, it's unimaginable. But saying that, Travis Hunter just top 5 in every category. But my big pushback is, how come he's not on the Jim Thorpe list? How come he didn't even make that? If he's one of the best DBs in the land, and Deion Sanders is pushing him, and he won this Heisman weeks ago. No, you didn't win the Heisman weeks ago. Ashton Jeanty has been killing it. Now, if you had to compare him with Melvin Gordon, Barry Sanders, Henry, comparing to all that, okay, he may be a little bit less. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about. Ashton Jeanty is the offense for the Broncos. Yes, they have a passing game, but that passing game is not opening up anything in the running game. When you have Ashton Jeanty standing back there like he's Michael Myers, he's not even doing fundamentally what he's supposed to be doing in the backfield, meaning he doesn't give a damn. He knows how good he is. And the NFL is going to find out how good he is. But it's just sad that he doesn't have 60 or 70 receptions. But if he did have 60 or 70 receptions, that was just going to take away from the yards that he's gained. So, yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like a catch-22 for me.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I will say about Deion, I think he's made a really concerted effort to, kind of insist on Travis Hunter getting the ball to try to push him winning the Heisman. That's clear and evident whenever they're up 48 or what were they up 41-0 or something on Oklahoma State, and they're throwing deep balls to Travis Hunter down the sideline in the fourth quarter. You're like, okay, well, what are we doing? And that's clear what they wanted. They're trying to get him over that 100-yard receiving and 3 touchdowns, and that's what they're pushing for. And I get it, that's what you're coaching for, but I don't see Boise State doing that with Jeanty. I think they just use him as their as the player that he is. They use him to win football games, and I think that's kind of why Boise State's right in the thick of the playoff conversation right now.
And probably my last thing is, just to play off of what you said. When Boise State has been up this year in the fourth quarter, they pulled them.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders in their last game, they didn't pull Travis Hunter. They were having him play the entire game when they're up 40 points. Like, there's no sense in that. Like, I'm not going to go the sportsmanship route, but when you are trying to inflate your player statistics just to make him look better in the Heisman race, like, come on now. We can do better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But, I mean, like you said, it's a popularity contest, so Travis Hunter's probably going to bring this thing home.
Yeah. Well, that is going to be it for today's episode of The Burn. Hey, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Can you do that, YouTubers? It really helps us pop in a big way. Everything is free here. That's all we ask of you. Leave a comment below if you feel like anything in this episode was abrasive. And if you're on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, drop us that 5-star rating and review. It does help us out tremendously. So thank you guys for doing that. And follow us all on our social media platforms at Hot Zo Sports. And go follow Murdy's podcast and join the sports pages that are meant for you, because this is truly why we do this. This is not for me. This is for you, for the people. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that notification button. And Murdy, what were your handles on YouTube and Twitter again, so the audience knows?
Yeah, y'all can follow us on YouTube at the Monty and Murdy CFB Show. We're on Twitter at Monty and Murdy. You can check us out on TikTok at Monty and Murdy CFB. Like I said, I just wanted to reach out to you. Thank you for having me on. I think it was awesome to do the show with you. I hope we can maybe do some more in the future. It's been an awesome experience, and thank y'all for listeners for listening. And yeah, like I said, be sure to reach out, subscribe to the channel, give him a follow, give him some comments, and either way, it was good. It was good talking the ball with you, man.
Oh yeah, it's always a fun time to talk ball with anybody that's passionate as me, even if they don't quite agree with what my scores are going to be. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, but I think we will be doing something in the future. We got some things cooking for you guys, so just go ahead and do yourself a big favor. Turn on that TV and watch all of these games, and you can find out if our predictions are right. But I hope everybody has a blessed week and enjoys championship weekend. Murdy and Ryan Van Dever signing off. Peace.